You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. And yes, I have the mother of all colds in this single-digit February weather in the Northeast. But we have a very full program today, so I want to get right to it. Continuing our celebration of Black History Month, we focus on the woman who was the pioneer of the national black press, Alice Dunnigan. Also, Ann Hornaday, film critic for The Washington Post, will help dissect the very undiverse Oscars. Then we have a two-segment special, a never-before-aired taped conversation taped in my living room between Kathleen Hanna of Riot Girls and Bikini Kill fame and the woman she adored, Lesley Gore, whom we lost to cancer a week ago. It truly is extraordinary and a first. But now we need to look inside the headlines. Two headlines this week. Big headline: Walmart is going to give a raise in April, lifting its hourly wages at its stores in the United States, that is, to at least $9. It just appears to be an attempt to stem employee turnover, and they're reacting, of course, to pressure from labor groups and employees, and even from some politicians. And they pledged to raise the wage floor in 2016 to $10 an hour. Look, nobody is saying that this doesn't help a little for low-wage workers. And it may be, hopefully, it will lead to raises at places like Home Depot and Target and other low-wage retailers, that they will follow suit. But we have to understand that this is a very small improvement. I mean, gratitude and hallelujahs are really not in order for them doing what they should have done ages and ages ago. The boost will be the greatest at Walmart for the 6,000 workers, note, out of a workforce of 1.3 million, the 6,000 workers who currently make the federal minimum wage, with $7.25 an hour. For many other workers, though, the increase will be less than $1 an hour. And Walmart can afford to do better than that. It is mega rich. In fact, there's no doubt that many, many more workers at Walmart and at other such stores would be making the federal minimum wage, except for the fact that 29 states and the District of Columbia, and now some cities as well, have minimums now above the federal level. And there's also very little doubt that Walmart and other similar employers would pay more if the low wages were not basically subsidized by you and I, taxpayers, who pay for the food stamps and the other public assistance that's absolute dire necessity for low-wage workers to survive. Everything needs overhaul here. Overtime pay standards haven't been updated. Collective bargaining protections have been eroded away by states and court rulings. And, with the Republican-dominated Congress, this is unlikely to change soon. But President Obama can and really must move forward and follow up by executive action on his 2014 order to raise the minimum wage. This is just unconscionable in the United States of America. Headline number 2, also unconscionable for other reasons. It was a front-page story on the New York Times that progressive activists in Syria, progressive groups, concerned that they were losing attention of what's happening to ordinary Syrians being bombed and strafed and displaced every day, being displaced by the dramatic, horrific videos of the Islamic State, decided to, mimic the imagery of the Islamic State. So this is progressive groups, remember, they put children in orange jumpsuits in a cage, and they posed them looking terrified while someone brandished a torch, a flame, near them, the implication being that they too could be set on fire, or would be, or have been. Now, while there's no doubt that that's a gripping image, there is the interesting moral question of why you descend to your adversaries' brutal tactics. even more interesting is the fact that Syrian women tried to march peacefully, to hold sit-ins peacefully, to bring attention to the forgotten Syrian people in all this, who are getting it from the left, the right, and the center, from Islamic State, from Assad, from everybody. But they weren't allowed to demonstrate, either by Assad or the left or the right, either for traditional reasons, our women don't do that, or for so-called protective ones. Mind you, they're being bombed and their lives are being destroyed, but suddenly the guys want to protect them from marching peacefully. So, rather than elevate the level of protest, as the women had planned to do, with nonviolent protests that would catch and hold the conscience of the world, the progressive male groups decided that they would imitate the Islamic State. This, of course, causes a numbing of sensibility as you try to outdo each other in these horrific images, which are really terror pornography. This creates a rhinocerisation of feeling. It requires ever greater titillation, and it's very, very dangerous. And now for our first guest. Carol McCabe Booker is a former journalist and a Washington, D.C. attorney. She co-authored with her husband, the journalist Simeon Booker, Shocking the Conscience, a reporter's account of the civil rights movement. She has written and freelanced for the Washington Post, Reader's Digest, Ebony, Jet, etc., and she has now edited a remarkable autobiography, which we'll hear all about. Welcome to Women's Media Center Live, Carol. It's good to have you here.
Thank you, Robin. It's my pleasure.
Well, it's my pleasure to have read this remarkable book. The book is Alone Atop the Hill, the autobiography of Alice Dunnigan, pioneer of the National Black Press, edited by Carol McCabe Booker, with whom I'm speaking this morning, and a foreword by Simeon Booker. Some people do not understand the majestic and intricate real art of fine editing, and this is a perfect example of it. This was not just a little blue pencil here or there. You found this book, which she had self-published, this remarkable woman who came all the way from a sharecropper's cabin in Kentucky to be the first black woman reporter accredited to the White House and to Congress and then to the Department of State and the Supreme Court. I mean, she really did create the National Black Press. You found this manuscript from where it had been accumulating dust, and you reassembled it. What did you do with it that now we actually have it in our hands, masterfully edited? Bravissima. Tell us the story.
I just took the parts that are the most astounding. Her book was written in parts 1, 2, and 3, and I kept parts 1 and 2. Part 1 being her incredible life growing up in Kentucky, becoming a school teacher, surviving the Depression, and 2 dreadful marriages to men who were, I'm telling you, Robin, they were good-looking dudes, but once she got over that, she found out there was nothing else there in common. They did not share her aspirations, her goals, anything.
This has, of course, never happened to any other woman in history.
Exactly. Part 2 of the book was her converging upon Washington, as she put, a great new world. It was a very different world, but it was similar in some respects in that Washington was still a very southern city. It was segregated. It was difficult for any black person, and especially for a reporter trying to get around and cover things.
Much less a woman. Much less a woman.
And she did say in her book right at the outset, she encountered many more obstacles as a woman than as a black person.
Right.
The third part of her book was about her life after journalism. She left journalism in 1961 and joined the Kennedy administration and then the Johnson administration as a education consultant for the EEOC and for the President's Committee on Youth. She wrote, she spoke around the country, she was an activist. It was really the spoils of a contest that she won. And that part, especially years in government, I've been in government, and it sounded so familiar. It was been there, done that.
Right.
And I thought, to get people to read her story and to be inspired by it, you had to stick to the core, and the core was in parts 1 and 2.
Right. Well, that's very true, and it's certainly, if it whets their thirst, they can follow up on the political part.
Oh,
but the
the
political,
book is there.
That's right. The book is there, but the amazing part about this. I mean, she was so poor; she was really struggling just to make a living. I apologize for my voice. I've got a terrible cold this morning. But to become the first black and female and reporter to be accredited to the White House was enormous, absolutely staggering. And then to go on to Congress, and each of these steps was unheard of. And she not only broke the path, but she paved it so others could come behind her. That's also quite remarkable.
Exactly. Sonia Ross of Associated Press, who nominated Alice for the Black Journalists Hall of Fame 2 years ago, said that Alice had paved the way for every black woman who ever covered the White House.
Yes, right. Well, it's true. And it's such good stories. I mean, the first person encounters with presidents, with Truman, with Eisenhower, with Kennedy, is just story after story after story. And she became chief of the Associated Negro Press Bureau in Washington. There had not been such a thing. I mean, to create it and then to establish it and then to make it accessible for those who come after. That's an amazing history. It was a totally white male-dominated field, journalism, at that point. And there she
very much is.
Yes, it is. But
yes.
Because of people like her and you, less so. Although not so much that we don't still need the Women's Media Center. But at that point, she was just, the first swimmer on the ice gets the most cut, the second finds it broken, and the third finds it gone. What a service you've done with this book. What an incredible service.
Thank you.
I hope it becomes a textbook in journalism schools. Not that it reads like a textbook, it reads like an adventure story.
Well, Eleanor Cliff told me she is using it in her journalism seminar at Hunter College in New York, and I'm really happy to hear that.
That is wonderful. Now, if only she'd call it an ovular and not use seminar, I'd be happy because of the etymology of seminar. But never mind, that's just me carping on language. There's this wonderful pictures as well, this wonderful one on the jacket. She was such a young woman, such a sweet-faced young woman, just barreling on in to these pale male halls with a mission of her own voice and her own right to cover, power.
Yes, and she did it without her boss's support. Claude Barnett, at every turn, would say something like, "We've been trying to get a man in there for years. What makes you, a woman, think you can do it?" Or when she wanted to go on the cross-country train trip with President Truman, he said, "Women don't take trips like that."
And off she went,
Yes, on her own dime.
Yeah.
She said, "With your consent, I'll pay for it myself." Some friends of mine have said, "Well, she should have said, 'I'm going whether you like it or not.'" Well, you couldn't. You needed somebody to be working for the credentials. So
of course.
She had to have his consent.
Of course. Well, this is an absolutely brilliant book. The original that she did, and even more so, dare I say, the edited version, which you've taken and shaped and made more presentable to 21st century personas and consciousness. But it's a dynamo. Alone Atop the Hill, the autobiography of Alice Dunnigan, pioneer of the National Black Press. And we've been talking with the woman who masterfully brilliantly assembled and edited the earlier version, Carol McCabe Booker. Thank you for doing this work and bringing us this book in a very populist sense. Thank you for your own work as a reporter, and thank you for being with us on Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you, Robin. I've so enjoyed it.
It's that time here at Women's Media Center Live for a short break. I'm Robin Morgan, but I'll be right back, and with me I will have Ann Hornaday, the film critic for The Washington Post.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. I remember a remarkable young woman who worked at Ms. Magazine, very smart, very dedicated, very serious, and she grew up to become the film critic for The Washington Post. Here is Ann Hornaday. Oh, Ann, dear Ann, welcome to the program.
Oh, it's a pleasure and a thrill to be here.
Well, it's such a pleasure to have you here because you come out of the Ms. Farm team of Ms. Magazine, but you went on to great things as the film critic for The Washington Post. It is such a thrill to read you because it's a position of power, and you've compromised not at all. Your feminism and intelligence are intact, even if my voice this morning is not.
I owe it all to you and to my sisters at Ms. It's where I started, and I still use those principles every single day, the good fundamentals I learned there.
Well, that's lovely and complimentary, but I think you were born with some of this talent, my
Oh.
God. So, the Oscars, which took place a few days ago, except, as far as I'm concerned, except for the great Patricia Arquette explosion and the Jack Black moment, not much attention paid to the rather screaming diversity or lack thereof problem, which in a sense is not surprising because I think it's that the Academy membership is 94% white and 77% male. Is that it?
Yep, I think that was the LA Times did a study a couple of years ago, and that's about what they came up with.
Yeah, not good. And the LA Times just a day or so ago came up with new figures on the directors, and following in the track of the Martha Lausen Center for the Study of Women in Television and Film stats. But the films directed by women stubbornly low over the past 5 years, hitting a high of 8.1%, whoop-de-doo, in 2010, and falling to a low last year of 4.6%. But the problem, tell me if I'm wrong, the problem is that it doesn't just stop with the directors, because right. For example, in the Martha Lausen study, It's a Man's Celluloid World, found that females comprised just 12% of protagonists, 29% of major characters, and 30% only of all speaking characters last year. But in films with at least one woman director and or writer, immediately it bumps up. Then women comprise 39% of the protagonists, 33% of major characters, and 37% of all speaking characters, and the same is true in ethnicities. So what, in God's name, do we do about this?
Well, I actually think the Oscar telecast really helped. I think Patricia Arquette's speech was just galvanizing, and to pan over and see Meryl Streep and Jennifer Lopez just whoop their approval,
yes,
suggested to me that this isn't going away, and they're not, I hope, not going to let it. And I might even add, I'm not a great fan of the red carpet ritual, but this year, another person we need to honor and be grateful for is Reese Witherspoon.
Yes.
Because she really helped spearhead the Ask Her More campaign, which tried to get those red carpet journalists to ask women actors something else other than who designed their gown and what makeup they were wearing and what jewelry. And they did. I was really heartened to see that the interviewers took that to heart, and the little snippets of interviews that I saw were really substantive and about their work and about their careers and about the characters that they were playing. So I kind of felt like that suggests to me, between that and the Patricia Arquette moment, that there are actual, powerful women within the industry for whom this is now a priority. And Witherspoon herself, she had Wild there. She was a producer of Gone Girl, two women-centric narratives, and she has declared her intention to produce more of those films with female protagonists. And, we only have to look as far as Selma, which was so masterfully directed by Ava DuVernay, to understand why point of view matters. Because, that script came to her as really a two-man show between Martin Luther King and Lyndon Baines Johnson.
Right.
And she went in and tore it apart and rebuilt it to include a multitude of points of view. She got Diane Nash into that to that narrative. She got Amelia Boynton into that narrative. And that would not have happened if it hadn't been Ava.
That's right. And also, in fact, I was curious before I saw it to find out whether King's womanizing was actually going to be mentioned, and of course, it actually was. Now,
Exactly.
I don't think a male director would have done that.
Agreed. And in that particular scene, that was very much Coretta Scott King's scene. That was very much from her point of view, and she was the protagonist within that scene. So those are the subtleties, that point of view and and when I interviewed Ava and David Oyelowo when they came through Washington, he basically said, yes, it matters, and no one would have done that other than Ava, or a woman, and women do have a tendency, as you and I know, to be more collaborative and maybe a little bit less great man theory, or great anyone theory. And to look at groups and to try to look at movements, and she did that. She did that as best she could while making it driven by King and his journey. So, I'm always optimistic, but I do feel like something clicked last night and it'll be really interesting to me to see, now that Patricia Arquette has put herself out there, how she will, you can't go, it's like, I hope she realizes. I
know. I thought
we're taking this seriously.
Yes, and I thought, will she ever work in this town again? But there's always television, and I wanted to ask you. I mean, are they in the film industry the pale males in power, and the few token women, which doesn't necessarily cut it until there begins to be at least three at any one given place, so that they can have some support. But are they noticing at all that in television, huge success of strong women characters, strong women writers, strong women directors? Shonda Rhimes owns Thursdays. And do they notice that this success is possibly imitatable, hint, hint? Or do they not care?
I think part of this is also about age, because they have figured out that young women are powerful. I mean, we have the Hunger Games, we have the Twilight franchise.
Right.
And, okay, all right, that's one niche where I think that the female protagonists and female film goers are being recognized as having power. So let's open up that lens to include women who aren't, 25.
Right.
And I think that's what TV gets, and the adult audience has migrated as well. We should, because we're being served, we're being rewarded with really high quality writing and production values. And I think it's, so in other words, it might be overdetermined. It might be a function of a lot of these things.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me that 50 Shades of Grey did so well. I don't know quite where to put that. I'm still processing that fact.
I am too. Help me out here.
Because that is, we can applaud it on the one hand as being a female-driven story. And frankly, I actually thought that her character, I didn't read the books. Life's too short to read bad books. But she was an interesting character, and she had her own autonomy, and she was, as Dakota Johnson played her, I thought, she had a lot of sort of eye-rolling humor. But again, I think she kind of represents more on the younger end of the age scale, and I would like to see the Julianne Moores and the Meryl Streeps and the Patricia Arquettes to have better roles to play.
Well, also, I'd love to see, I think you're absolutely right, and I think that there is an age differential. But I'd also love to see films about younger women that are about relationships and relationships between women. The Bechdel test,
Absolutely.
where they're not always relating to a man or talking about a man. And I heard somewhere, and you'd be the person who could tell me the truth about this, that one of the things that drives action movies is that internationally, and that the international market is so humongous now for American movies, is that it requires less dialogue. And
yes,
that
exactly.
requires less dubbing or less subtitles. So
Exactly.
it's simply cheaper. Shoot 'em up, kill, blood, gore in any language is the same. So
True.
women's movies, quote unquote, whatever that means, chick flicks or movies about relationships or with conversation,
Right.
are a problem. This is
That's
true?
very true.
Wow.
Yes, that is true. That is true, and it is depressing. But I do think, again, there are always these exceptions, to that. And I think Hollywood they get locked into these self-fulfilling prophecies that, for a long time the cliche was black doesn't travel. In other words, stories
Right.
by and about African Americans won't perform overseas. Well, guess what? That's not true.
That's
The
right.
Butler did very well overseas.
Yeah.
Selma is now just starting to roll out. It'll be fascinating to see how that rolls out.
Yes, it will.
In terms of democratic movements, that have been so inspired by King and the civil rights movement.
Modeled on it.
Exactly. See how they respond to that. So I just think, all it takes is just those, first one or two, and as you said, maybe it's that magic number of 3, that we need 3 to prove as proof of concept that these narratives will travel and that they do transcend. But, it takes somebody as powerful as a Reese Witherspoon or somebody like a Megan Ellison, the producer who's, she's been producing Catherine Bigelow's films.
Right.
I don't know if she's associated with Kelly Reichardt's new film or not, but it just takes a few brave souls to put a toe in the water and do it really well.
That's
and
right.
Execution is part of it.
That's right. That's right.
They have to be good.
Yeah, but we're certainly Sundance alone, and it's only one of many, has showcased the fact that there's a lot of talent out there. They can no longer claim, quote, we can't find any qualified ...
Exactly. And Ava DuVernay, even though she, was working for a big studio in this instance, I don't think she has at all turned her back on her indie roots in terms of, and in terms of just not asking permission, because
right.
We want the studios to get hip, we want them to get with it, but there's absolutely no reason to wait around, and there's every reason to just, it's like a do-it-yourself with others model,
right?
Which I think Ava's really perfected, and she's really, really solid with her fellow filmmakers like Dee Reese, Ama Asante, the people who have really come through more of the indie scene,
right?
And they're really supportive of one another, and I just sort of feel like, okay, studios, we can do it with you, or we can do it without you, and if we do it without you, you're leaving money on the table, but it's like what Meryl Streep said a few years ago. Don't they want to make money? Because these films make money,
Yes,
They're made at a
precisely.
budget and they can make it back. And, gee, what's wrong with that?
Wow. For the 10,000th time, I'm so glad I'm on the same side as you are, because you're a powerful voice for sanity, women, and other good things.
Oh, back at you, sister.
Listen, thank you for everything you do. You have to come back and talk to us again, please.
I will.
And
Anytime.
Love you lots, and take care. And thank you for being with us today on Women's Media
Love
Center
you.
Live. Love you.
It's
Bye-bye.
been an honor. Thanks, Robin.
Time for another break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'll be right back with an exclusive, never-heard-before tape conversation between Kathleen Hanna and Lesley Gore, taped in my living room. Don't go away.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And welcome back again. The following conversation has never been aired before. It was recorded at my home 10 years ago between two American musical stars, both feminists, both of them my friends. Kathleen Hanna, now 47, pioneered Riot Girls and became an American institution. She's a feminist activist and now characterizes herself as a punk zine writer. In the early to mid-1990s, she was the lead singer of feminist punk band Bikini Kill before fronting Le Tigre in the late 1990s and early 2000s. In 1998, she released a lo-fi solo album under the name Julie Ruin, and since 2010 has been working on a project called The Julie Ruin. A documentary film about Kathleen was released in 2013 titled The Punk Singer, detailing her life and career, as well as revealing her years-long battle with Lyme's disease. She last appeared on this program in May of 2013. Lesley Gore died February 16th at age 68 after the shocking, swift onslaught of a highly aggressive cancer. In fact, one of her last public appearances had been at the Women's Media Center Awards Gala only 2 months before, feeling and looking healthy. Lesley first came to fame at age 16 with the song It's My Party, then continued as the first solo rock singer, with other hits, including You Don't Own Me and Out Here on My Own, which she co-wrote. Her long career spanned Broadway and television, plus clubs across the country, as well as innumerable benefits for progressive causes. She came out as a lesbian woman and was the subject of an Arts and Entertainment Network biography special. Kathleen and Lesley were both pals of mine, and I learned by chance that Kathleen was a great fan of Lesley's, despite the seeming abyss in their musical styles. She was also very excited about Lesley's then-just-out album, titled Ever Since, Lesley's first new album in 30 years. Which, in the interests of full disclosure, I proudly confessed, was arranged, recorded, and produced by Blake Morgan, to whom I am decidedly related. Kathleen told me she longed to meet Lesley, maybe interview her for Ms. Magazine. I loved the idea, and so did Lesley. So, one afternoon in 2005, we got together over coffee and wine and munchies at my home, and we recorded this conversation, excerpts of which did appear in Ms. In fact, since the taping was intended for transcription purposes, it's not of the best audio quality, and you can even hear a photographer's camera shutter clicking at times in the background. But what does come through clearly is this intimate conversation between two musicians, each an icon of her time, trading secrets about influences, sexism, the music industry, career longevity, reinventing oneself, craft, and most of all, music. This audio tape has never before been made public. It is a WMC Live exclusive with all rights reserved. It begins after laughter and testing, with Kathleen talking about Lesley's new, what would turn out to be her last, album.
You hear a woman's voice. Mm-hmm. It's not you 10 years ago or 20 years ago. It's you now, and it's just as good / better. You know, and the quality, the quality of it is, it's the same. I got the same chills, and it's corny to say, oh, I cry when I listen to your voice, but I've cried when I've listened to happy songs that you've done, just because it's the quality of your voice. I wish I had a good thing of like it was this feminist reason, but it wasn't a feminist reason. It was just
it's a musical reason. I understand that. I came to singing because I fell in love with the song. I was completely taken by the fact that for 2.5 minutes, or 3 minutes, or 3 minutes and 15 seconds, you could go virtually somewhere else on another plane. And what intrigued me about what made me want to sing was being the interpreter for that 2.5 minutes. And that's, I think, how in that amount of time, you had to figure out how to get that message across. And the best way to do it was to just reach down and be as honest as possible. And the wonderful thing about songs, in a way, is they can afford to be a little cornier than real life, So you're sort of in a hyper-emotional state. But that's what intrigued me, being able to present little vignettes, one after the other, going from one emotion to another. That was amazing to me. Wow. And I think that's still why I like to sing. I really just try to think about the lyrics. When I'm doing a song like, well, you don't know me, you don't have to, I mean, it's the thoughts come as you're singing.
It's totally different on this record. Yeah. It's totally different than any version I've ever heard of it, and it's so you and so natural, and I know how hard that is.
Mm.
I mean, like, maybe is it hard for you, or is it just like, did you just go in the studio and be like, well, this is the way I phrase things, this is how I do it, because you phrase it different, you are slowing down,
well, first
speeding up?
We started with a new arrangement. Basically, I've been doing that song, piano voice, forever. What we did when we decided we wanted to do the songs, one of the things we both felt was we needed to do it differently, come up with another way of doing it, or really wasn't taking it to a new place. And it was really a team effort. Once Blake came up with that, it put it in another place, and I had to rethink the lyric and where all that stuff went. Once Blake and I started working, he came to me with some material that he thought would be representative of what he'd want to hear on a record that Lesley Gore was going to put out at this time. I've watched Blake's career for a very long time. I mean, I can remember when he couldn't reach the pedals on the piano. I say that affectionately because I still can't reach. And, I mean, I heard his first songs, and I really felt that there was something happening here. What really turned the real tipping point for me was when Blake finished his Burning Daylight. And I came down here to listen. He was still trying to sequence, and I had the dog with me, and I just put me into headsets and said, listen. And I just sat there for 42 minutes, and I listened to everything. All of a sudden, it was sort of a board upside my head. I realized that a little bit of time after I hear Burning Daylight, and we have a little brunch the weekend of Thanksgiving. Let's make a record. Let's just make a record. Let's just do what I hear you should do, and let's keep it simple. It's about your voice. It's about finding good material, and it's about organic. It's about 4 pieces. Maybe we use some backgrounds, but no horns, no strings, no synthesizers. Yeah. Just about 4 pieces in your voice and great material.
Can you tell me about the best vocal performance you think you've ever done in the studio?
I was doing a session with my brother, and we were redoing. This was back in early 80s, late 70s, and we had an offer to do some demos for Columbia. So there we were in the studio, proving ourselves yet again, and we took the old Dionne Warwick song, "Don't Make Me Over." Michael did a really great arrangement. I mean, it was cooking. It was hard. It was almost like You Don't Own Me. It was like it really had something going. And I walked out high as a kite because it was just great, and that was it. It was one take, and it never saw the light of day, so what does it mean?
That was another question, is like, what's the track that never saw the light of day?
Yeah, that never did.
So what was it? If you don't have to tell me, but like, have you ever had a really bad experience, or like, what's the time when you went in and just like, have you ever had it where you go in and your confidence gets wracked and you're like, like
for that they turned around. For that they just turned around and said, I think I don't remember the name of the A&R man, but he said he passed on it. That was it. You don't get much else. He passed.
This speech is so.
By that point I was so used to it. It really, it was just. I would have been surprised if I had heard he's taking it. I wouldn't know what to do with that at that point.
Yeah, you just go, oh well, you're lost. I'm going to keep working. I mean, that's one of the amazing things about, I think, when you decide, like, I want longevity. I don't want to be a flash in the pan. I don't want to, there's going to be years where no one cares about me, and there's going to be years, or maybe 15 minutes, where people really care about me, and I'm going to ride this out, because even when I've had times where, I had to, like, reinvent myself, and all they would want to talk about was Bikini Kill, and I'm like, it seems like this record to me really represents that for you, of your whole entire self being a part of it.
Actually, to even bring it closer to what you're talking about, we have to actually reimagine the old hits. Now, this is fascinating because we're now looking at It's My Party and Judy's Turn to Cry and She's a Fool, and we're wondering, how do we do these now and be true to the album we've done? And this is going to be fascinating to see how the people who are the fans from the 60s, who love these songs, okay, how are they going to take these reimaginings, if you will? What we've decided to do is think about these songs as if they were given to us yesterday. How would we do them? And because we have this organic thing going on now, that's how we're approaching it. So what they're not going to hear are the horn licks. They're not going to hear some. They'll hear most of the background stuff, but not some of it. They won't hear any horns. They won't be hearing any strings. And it's going to be fascinating to see whether they accept. I mean, the song still sounds the same, but it's different.
Man, if you did Judy's Turn to Cry, like, really slow, but
we sort of do take it down.
That could be nuts. That could be like
Sunshine Lollipop.
So yeah, that's a total opportunity.
Slow down a little, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
It's
genius.
It puts it on. It's another song. So for me, these songs are coming to life in a whole new way.
We have to interrupt here, but just for a moment. This is Women's Media Center Live, and I'm Robin Morgan, but we'll be right back. And in the next segment, Lesley Gore and Kathleen Hanna will discuss women in the music industry and being taken seriously.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back again with Lesley Gore being interviewed by Kathleen Hanna in 2005, an exclusive for Women's Media Center Live.
Women have never been the favorite gender in the recording business.
No, like, where's the female Elvis Costello? Like, that kind of longevity and where people are constantly excited about the new project. And he's totally allowed to go do a Burt Bacharach thing and then to come back.
Anything he wants.
Exactly.
Which is wonderful.
Which is totally wonderful, but at the same time, I can't help but be like, I want 20 female Elvis Costellos now, because there are. I definitely think that the indie thing is something that is the potential for the future of women in music. I mean, I've always felt that way. And like, we actually have our own label, Latigo Records, that when we went on a major label, we took all of our records that were already independent and wanted to keep them independent. But we actually went on a major, which I think is really interesting.
It's fantastic.
You've been on majors.
It's so fascinating.
And now you just went.
Well, in fact, you've gone to the major that I just came from.
And I just went to the major.
When you walked into the studio, it was all men. That's what it was. The only time you see another woman is when the background singers came in. And that was great. There was never an assistant engineer who was a woman. There was, there was never a woman. So it was just, I didn't think anything of it. It was just the way it was. It didn't seem odd. It just seemed that's the way it was.
Exactly.
There was an article in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago about how many women are now in positions of power in the film industry, and how the film industry is changing as a result. Slowly, but it is changing. There has never really been a woman at the top in the music industry. Maybe Suzanne DePass for 10 minutes in the 70s or 60s with Motown.
There's this other woman who we met with who was the head of Elektra.
Okay.
Who signed Missy Elliott.
All right.
I know
who you mean.
She left right before we were going to sign. We actually read in the New York Times that she was going to get fired, so we didn't sign to her.
Did I have as much say in those records as I do in this? No, of course not. But I also didn't know that much then.
Exactly.
So I shut my mouth and I listened and I watched.
Well, it's a really interesting way to learn, to have that structure around you. Because I
Absolutely.
come from exactly the opposite, where I started with no structure, and now I really want structure. Like, all I want to do is cover other people's songs, and,
Wow.
you know, just because I've had to do it all myself the whole time, from, like, doing our own press. Like, I didn't even know there was publicists or any of those people who are probably a regular day-to-day part of your life when you're, by the time you're 17 or 18. And when I was, like, 19 and I first started being in a band, I was booking my own tours and going on the road and driving the van and all that kind of stuff. And it was a great experience, and I'm glad I got to learn all of those different aspects of it. And then I came to New York, and I met people who were booking agents and publicists. And I was like,
concept.
and I was like, I did all that stuff myself. And then I started wanting that. I was like, wow, you know, maybe I could write better songs if I wasn't on the phone all the time.
Hello.
You know, before all this stuff happened. And so now I'm at the point where I'm just finally got the tour bus, got the publicist, have a major label, after not having it for 15 years, and I'm like exhausted.
Thank God my parents never let me go on one of those Dick Clark caravans. I probably would have had a good time, but they're exhausting. They work those kids unbelievably to put them on a bus. They travel all night. Get to a hotel at 5 in the afternoon. You know, I mean, it's really work. There were times that Dick Clark would fly me in for certain shows, and I'd get on the bus to go to the venue with everybody, but I never did the long things. The only time I ever, if I was working Vegas maybe for 4 or 5 weeks, it's the only time I've had to be out for that long.
How'd you take care of your voice when you were doing that, like doing Vegas before?
Very carefully. In Vegas, the big trick is drink as much water as humanly possible. Even while you're on stage, as soon as you feel dry,
Same thing I do.
Yes, Lord. That's about all you can do.
And you have like warm-ups to you and...
I do. I find though if I'm singing every day,
you're warm.
I'm good. A little bit of vocalizing before when we were doing vocals. I just had to come in and just do go. I love that one. It's one of my favorites.
I can't roll. I can't roll my tongue. I can't roll R's. I can't roll.
I love that one, and I do that a couple of times, and I'm ready to rock. We go through a song once or twice, boom, let's take it.
I have to like warm up for an hour.
That's a long time.
I have a really thin voice.
That's a long time to have to.
Well, it's not an hour straight. It's like I do 10 minutes here and then I do 20 minutes.
Well, that's sort of what I do all day. I'll grab 5 or 10 minutes throughout the day. I'll just sit at the piano and I'll just,
so you stay
see how high up I can get, and now I won't do it for a couple of hours. And that's, I think, the best way to vocalize. The odd thing is that if you had known me at 17 or 18 and you came home to my house and we hung out in the den at the piano, these would have been more of the things that we would have been playing together. If you asked me to sit down and play something, it would have been more like this than, I wasn't Jerry Lee Lewis at the piano, I didn't have that thing. I really love the ballads. I grew up listening to Ella Fitzgerald and Sarah Vaughan and Dinah Washington. And these were the ladies that, taught me how to deliver a message. So that's where my love began. And that's where it still is. Singing these songs feels really good. One of my managers from a while ago, Dick Fox, who put together the Golden Boys Bandstand show with Bobby Rydell and Frankie Ella and Fabian. He was interviewed, and he had been my manager. He had actually, back in the 70s, called me. I was living out in L.A. Anyone can make a mistake. And he called me and said he was with William Morris, and he was handling Barry Manilow and Melissa Manchester and Manhattan Transfer, and I was just starting to write. And he said, how would you like to come into New York and go into, Sweeney's? That was really the first time I ever took my own writings and went into a club and did my own music. And he was instrumental in helping me with that. And one of the things he said on the A&E biography was, in the early years, no one took Lesley seriously because of It's My Party. You would have thought maybe You Don't Own Me would have made up some of that,
Right.
but apparently not. And when I thought about it, it was a little hurtful at first, but I thought about it and I thought, that's exactly right. So I was conscious making this album, not that it'd be that serious, but that I wanted to be taken seriously.
And now it's time for some fighting words. But fighting words is different this week. Life teaches us that you mourn the dead, but you go on, and you honor the living. So fighting words this week is dedicated to the indomitable fighting spirit of a woman who always took Lesley very seriously, her partner of 33 years, the talented jewelry designer Lois Sasson, who designed, among many other things, the award itself for the Women's Media Center Gala Awards. She is one of my longest-term friends. The following was written by Lesley, together with Ellen Weston, and appears on Ever Since, her last album. It's called We Went So High.
We went so high, as if we had no weight, as if we thought we both could fly. We went so high, we knew it wouldn't last. We flew too high, we flew too fast, and you're safe and sound anywhere you go from there is down. We went so high, we left it all below, found another place to go. So high, we'll never come so near, never see it quite so clear, 'cause when you think you're safe and sound anywhere you go from there is down. We went so high, so high, so high.
And that's it for today. This program is syndicated, but if you can't find the broadcast on a radio station in your area, you can visit us at WMCLive.com for the show, plus the archive of all our previous episodes, and at iTunes worldwide, where you can stream, download, and subscribe to the show's podcast. Also be sure to find us on Facebook and Twitter. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Opinions expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and Executive Producer of this program, Julie Burton, Senior Producer, Crystal Williams Chancellor, and our founding sponsor, Regina K. Scully. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Here's the last straw, one to cling to this week. Let's love each other and be kind, just that, while we can. Do join us next week right here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.